I was a very small boy when I first went out west with my parents and saw California, saw Hollywood in 1915. It was still almost rural. There were perhaps 2 or 3 buildings per block on what is now Hollywood Boulevard. The weeds grew so high on the vacant lots that my father could and did hide in them just to jump out at passers-by and the family to scare them. Bumpy dirt roads connected us to such far-flung outposts as Beverly Hills and then Santa Monica, which was on the ocean front. It was all rather like living inside a sketch plan of a metropolis that was still to come. Hollywood itself took its name from a fruit ranch that stood on the site of the present district. That name, in turn, was, well, according to legends, borrowed from another farm near Kansas City. Right from the start, out there, people have been stealing ideas of one sort or another from each other. Well, given the landscape and the climate, well, that is before the smog closed in, it's not surprising that so many of the early films in Southern California were Westerns. I think they had a special appeal for those first movie people as well as for the world public at large. Like our earlier pioneers, they had come west seeking their fortunes, and they were living in a sort of boomtown atmosphere and were free to make what they would of themselves and their new enterprise. So, newly emerged from its romantic past, the city of Los Angeles, of which Hollywood became a part, has been a sort of unconscious inspiration for them. In 1850, the American Union acquired a new state, California. Los Angeles, the old Spanish city, had begun to boom the year before as a result of the great gold rush. Dreams of riches brought new settlers in thousands, all gripped by the gold fever. But the gold rush was already far behind in the 1880s. And Los Angeles, far away from New Jersey, where Thomas Edison, the inventor of the light bulb and the phonograph, set himself to develop moving pictures. He delegated the design to his assistant, W.K.L. Dixon. By 1890, Dixon had finished a camera which he called the kinetograph. And by 1891, a kind of peep show in which the films could be viewed was called the kinetoscope. Foreseeing the commercial possibilities, the Edison Company at once took out a series of patents. In 1893, Dixon built the Black Maria, the world's first film studio, a tar paper hut set on a pivot so that it could be turned around to face the sun. It was in the Black Maria that the world's first film Western was made in 1898. These first Edison films were still shown in the kinetoscope peep show machines. But by 1900, Edison was producing films to be shown on huge screens in ordinary theaters. In 1903, audiences were electrified as never before by the great train robbery. The story relates how a gang of bandits tie up a station master and then secretly board the train. Great Train Robbery was directed by Edwin S. Porter. The great innovation of the film, which was to have profound effects on filmmakers all over the world, was to explore the possibilities of joining together separate pieces of film, separate shots, to tell a continuous story. Porter cuts from exterior to interior, from one place to another as he follows his story. The Great Train Robbery was filmed on the Lackawanna Railroad, not far from the Edison Labs in New Jersey, just across the Hudson River from New York. Yet Western life was recreated remarkably convincingly and colorfully. In the barn dance scene, a tenderfoot just arrived from the east is forced to dance. Meanwhile, news of the holdup arrives and a posse is formed to track down the bandits. The enormous success of the Great Train Robbery did much to swell the ever-growing audience that packed the Nickelodeons, little movie theaters hastily converted out of former shops. Admission, 5 cents. And as audiences in the big cities grew and grew, a new gold rush was on. For a man with $100 or so to invest and a moderately good head for business, the movies were a surefire investment. In New York and other eastern cities, film factories and film exchanges sprang up to provide the Nickelodeons with a reliable and endless supply of films. The Edison Company found that its patents were not adequate to give it a monopoly of films and equipment. Companies like American Biograph flourished in opposition.